Okay, this is Fraley's World Insight Blogs. Another chance for me to mouth off a little bit about what's going on in the world. And this is I'm broadcasting here on Sunday night at 5:40 p.m. 11/25/2018. Got it on my screen now too. I like this XSplit broadcasting software or program, whatever you want to call it, because it's got a lot of neat gadgets and it's really easy to use. It's just, you can even get different rooms and stuff. Like you can go over here, and if you want to look up something and let everybody else see what you're looking at, it's got a screen capture device on it that allows you to do that. It's pretty neat, and you can watch it while I'm looking up on something, but don't plan on being looking up very much stuff today. I figured I'd start off a little bit, talk about the migrants that's down on the border, and to do that, I can go back to, looks like it's called scenes. They give you different scenes. This is scene 2, or page 2, whichever you want to call it. Like Paul Harvey used to say, and now page 2 or something like that. Anyway, you can see the major headlines on Yahoo here. It says a migrant group tries to forcibly breach U.S. border. Hundreds of Central American migrants, mostly men, tried to breach the border crossing. Of course, I haven't had time to read it. I just brought this up myself and just saw it myself. So I'm probably going to read this and get back to you on this, but I just figured I'd give a few comments. That's why Trump, in the first place, put the National Guard and soldiers down on the border, because they figured something like this was going to happen. They even knew that from their intelligence that as soon as some of the other migrants got there, as many as 10,000 according to rumors, and these other migrants were waiting on those. And when they all got there together, they were going to forcibly try to run through the border. I don't think this is going to work. First off, there's not only the soldiers there, but there's a lot of barbed wire there, or not. Oh, I don't even know if you call it barbed wire, steel wire, wrapped around like barbed wire anyway, but only bigger. And these are sharp as a razor blade. You try to forcibly go through that and you're going to get cut up. And I don't care how you feel about these people, but a lot of, like CNN, the Clown News Network, Crummy News Network, or the Communist News Network, any name you get it fits. They're going to give a negative side of this. They're going to say there's women and children, but you can see right here, there's not any women and children in this picture. It's all young men, or maybe some middle-aged men, who knows, and probably some women too. I don't see any though, but you can't hardly tell from that picture. But anyway, they're going to try to rush through that, and I got news for them. It ain't going to work. According to this, it hadn't really worked either. They tried, but I guess it failed, because if it did, I would have heard something major on the news, whether it be Fox or Newsmax or something else. Of course, I need to catch up on that too. I got kind of behind on that, but these little rinky-dink people are not going to come through this border. They think they can just walk in here without consequences, and they think that they have rights. But I got news for them. They don't have any rights. Sure, they have rights in their country, but not in ours, because they're not citizens. They say they're, I've heard the comment, they say that they're universal citizens. And the United Nations may agree with that, but what the crap is the United Nations? It's not part of our government. They're just something they're just like a humanitarian organization almost, and we almost don't even want to be a part of it. I mean, it's so ridiculous the way they've got them and the what is it? American Civil Liberties Union, ACL, AC, ACLU, or yeah, ACLU. Sorry about that. American Civil Liberties Union is plumb pathetic. I mean, it's like they're saying that these people are more important than our own citizens in this country, and we allow so many hundred thousands of these people in a year anyway, or they call themselves migrants, when really they're actually they're carrying their own flag and they're throwing rocks and doing everything else, and they claim they don't like their own country, yet they're still carrying their flag and with pride and fighting against another country like they're almost. And I hate to say it, but I predicted that there was going to be invasions long before. What they really want to do, and you can disagree with me, but if you do your studying and your reading, I knew this in the let me see, back in the early 90s. I read about this. I even read a book about this called Reconquista, and it was a fiction type book, but I read it for one of my classes I took in school, and I kind of took a stance on it then. I'm not saying that I know anything, because I don't, but I kind of you could kind of see from that book that there was a forevision of what was going to happen in the future. And sure, it took this long for it to happen, although it has already been happening. What they've done is they've gradually crossed the border illegally, and they've settled in different parts, well, California and throughout the Southwest. And the way they do it is they're doing just like the Muslims do. They get their way into a country, and then they colonize it, and they gradually take over. That's why you see such a democratic system in place in California. It's because of all these people, and you also see a leaning toward socialism, and it's mostly in California, and in some other areas they've also migrated, which that's pretty much a danger, except for the fact that we still have a lot of concerned citizens, and a lot of citizens that are smart and that have woken up and know what's going on, and they're not stupid like some of these other liberals. And not all Democrats are bad. I'm not saying all Democrats are bad. There's some of them that are that have seen the problem with this too. Hillary Clinton even wanted a tougher border stance at one time, until she figured out she needed more voters. So she's gradually changed her tune about this quite a bit, and now you can see what's going on. It's basically they are trying to take freaking over. And if you read your history, at one time we basically took the Southwest away from them because of in history, if you study the 1840s of Manifest Destiny, that was our goal. We not only wanted to finish taking the Southwest but into the Pacific, but we even thought about taking over the Philippines and some other islands in the South Pacific and other places. And not only this, but President Pope at that time, he wanted to go down into Mexico and then even into South America and take over some of that. And I don't think a lot of the his Congress or his Senate in those days wanted to go that far. They did want manifest destiny, but I don't think they wanted to go that far. And then you had more manifest destiny in the 1890s because they wanted the same thing. They wanted to actually take Cuba at that time, well, which they partially took Cuba, I guess you could say, for a while until in the late 1950s when Castro, 58 I think it was to be exact. You can check that date, but I think it was 58 that Castro took Cuba over. But we took Hawaii, and we took American Samoa, we took Guam, we took a lot of areas in the South Pacific anyway. But at one time we wanted to go down and take over Mexico, Central America, and down into South America. Man, just think what it would have been like if we'd have done that. Pope was in a way my kind of man, and if we'd have took all of that over, these people that are trying to migrate into the U.S. now would have actually been citizens of the United States. And if you don't believe me about this, read the Manifest Destiny era in the 1840s and see what it was all about. I mean, just don't read a general book, but read about President Pope and his policies and his desires and what he actually wanted to do. But I wanted to get into something else, and this is a bit historical too. I wanted to talk about, let's talk a little bit about Hillary Dillery Dickory Doc Clinton, or whatever her name is. Would you believe that she's back in the news? And would you believe that in 2020 she will probably run for president again? She never learns her lesson. She actually thinks that she can win the presidency this time. And I'm thinking that if she runs, she's probably going to get slaughtered, because not only are there more people that are willing to vote against her and saw what she's really like and what her policies were, but people are woken up and they see what's going on. And it's true that we did lose the Congress, but we actually gained in the Senate this last election, 2018 election, Senate and the Congress, the House. We lost the House, but the House is not the big thing anyway. The Senate controls things. I mean, they're not going to be able to do anything without the Senate. The Senate's going to pretty well control what legislation goes into practice. I mean, it will be tougher for tougher for President Trump to get things done what he wants, but still he's going to get quite a bit done. Not only that, because he owns the Senate, he or pretty well controls the Senate, or the Republicans control the Senate. They're going to be able to get more judges in the Supreme Court, which is a good thing, because they can overturn Roe versus Wade. And I know there's some more technical stuff which I need to probably read up on that, but they can probably overturn Roe versus Wade, and there'll be some other fights they'll have to do, minor policy changes and stuff, things that go on, but they hopefully they can get that overturned, and with them having control of the Supreme Court, they can get a lot more legislation passed on. That's just one example of something that they can get passed. But anyway, they'll control the Supreme Court. But now Trump seems to be picking up, or these other federal judges like, what's this guy's name? I forget his name. Anyway, over these other federal judges, he's having trouble with them too, because they pass one law, or they don't pass a law, excuse me. They make rulings on laws, and it goes against what Trump wants done, such as border security and stuff. And they seem to favor the migrants, or not migrants, illegal aliens. They seem to favor them in a lot of different things, and they want to hand out rights to these people. These people seem to have rights, and Trump's having a lot of problems with that, because the judges want to pass ridiculous legislations and want to make rulings on stuff that they shouldn't be actually allowed to do according to the Constitution. In other words, these judges want to interpret the Constitution the way they think it ought to be in their opinion, and judges do have a lot of leeway when it comes to making judgments on stuff, but they're getting ridiculous. I mean, it's almost like they're put in there against Americans instead of being for America. And the Constitution was written for the United States, written for its citizens, not for citizens of other countries. And I'm sorry, but their judgments and their opinions on who should come in this country is flat, should go down the drain. I mean, it's almost like these people are drunk or something, making decisions on stuff. They're drunk in the mind. They're messed up, totally sick, wacko. Either that, or they're communist spies that somehow infiltrated our government and became judges, and somehow they got in there because we got a bunch of traitors in there or something. There's something wrong with the picture, and it's time that people woke up and saw this. Anyway, I don't know how I got off into that tangent, but anyway, I did. I said my piece anyway, so you can agree with me or disagree with me. I don't really care. All I care is about the security of the country and secured borders, and you can agree or disagree with me. But if you want to disagree with me, then you should move on the West Coast and move into California. And we already put a fence up around California too, in my opinion. Anyway, and Hillary Clinton, if she wants to be president, she can be the new president of California, but not of America. You can call it whatever you want. California, like the song goes by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. It's Californication, because that's all what it is. It's all corrupt, illegal, and they seem to stem from illegals. I mean, it's all. They want their own country. Let them have it, but let's close them off. Let's put a border around California too. But anyway, we need a border, and somehow Trump's got to get the money and the legislation passed to do this, and it's going to be harder because of the 2018 election. But we do control the Senate, so we do have a little bit of leeway there. So anyway, Hillary Clinton wants to run for president again, and she's not going to win. And if she has a platform that she's going to run on this time, I already figured out a good platform for her. I mean, since Trump runs on the platform Make America Great Again, MAGA, why can't Clinton have the platform of Make America Bad Again? And she can call it MABA. I don't know, it sounds kind of odd to me, but MABA, M-A-B-A, Make America Bad Again, because that's what she wants. She wants to totally destroy this country, because at heart she's a communist. I forget the guy's name. her mentors anyway. You can check it out too. Paul Lewinsky, forget the guy's name, but I've looked it up and I've even commented on the guy before here. Anyway, she used to be a Democrat, believe it or not, when she first started. She even sit in on the Watergate hearings back and way back there. She had something to do with that, and she got fired from that. And that may have messed her up and pissed her off or something. But anyway, she started reading up on civil rights, and she started her communist ideology that formed in her own mind was gradually forming in those days. And then she gradually, well, actually, she was a Republican. Excuse my misquote there, or misinterpretation. She started off as a Democrat, and then she got into her mentors that were communist and stuff. Paul Lewinsky or something like that, and George Soros and other people like that. She was in bed mentally with these guys as far as ideology goes, and she began to form her own ideology, and that's when she turned from being a Republican into being a Democrat. Anyway, so I wanted to straighten that up there because I messed that up because I twisted. So she started out as a Republican and then basically was transformed into a Democrat because of her mentors and stuff and what she had read. She formed her own little ideology there, and that's what she wants for the United States, which I honestly think we got too many people that are smart enough to know what's going on, and that's crazy. And it'll never stand here. There'll be bloodshed before that ever happens. And thank goodness for the people in the heart of America, the heart of the United States, the central part anyway, and a lot of other good states like, you can count out California, and you could count out probably New York. And what was it? Was it Minnesota? There was another bad state. Anyway, other than those states, it's pretty well solid Republican. There's a lot of independents like myself too that support Trump and lean to the right. And really, Trump at one time was a Democrat too. Now he ran as a Republican and he won. And he's been liberal on some things himself, but what he's done is made a connection with people. He knows basically what people need, what they want, and what they're thinking. And that's what he ran on as president. That's why he won. And Hillary Clinton could never make that connection. Plus, Hillary Clinton had no common sense. She didn't know what was going on. She only wanted her own agenda passed. She didn't care about what the people wanted. She wants to control people. And this goes all the way back to the frickin' Civil War. You can check this out. And if you've read enough and checked this out, and I wasn't a big fan of the Civil War when I was studying history, but I was a fan enough that I did know the economic system of that time. And the Civil War wasn't all about freeing the slaves like most people think. It was taxation, and it was about the Southern economy too, because the Southern economy dealt with cotton, and the only way that they could afford or could actually get the economy to work right, they needed the slaves. The slave was a big part of that economy too, and you take that away from them and the system goes down. And that's kind of what happened after the Civil War was over. When the slaves got their freedom, a lot of the big farmers or big, what do you call it, capitalists in the South that depended on the slave for slave labor and to make them money, and that's how they kept their. They had a kind of a Southern aristocracy, believe it or not, and of course everybody knows that. Everybody's read about the Civil War, knows what went on, but the southern people needed to control the blacks in order for their own benefit, for their own pocket, money in their own pocket. And when they took away slavery, the South had to turn to something else. What do you think they turned to? Well, with the compromise of 1870, what was it, 77? Was it eight? Is 1877 or 1876? Anyway, one of those 2 years, the South had to the compromise of 1877, or 1877. Well, 1877, I think it was. And how did they control the freed slaves that were there? Now, the slaves were used to being in a system of socialism. The farmers, while they were the aristocracy or farmers or big landholders that farm for cotton and stuff, they did take care of the slaves, and while their life was harsh for them, they actually were fed and had housing and had clothes. Maybe not the best of clothes, but they had clothes and they had housing, and they were fed. And true, life was harsh and families were separated, but they were, other than that, they were treated good. They were worked hard, and in some cases they could even move up in their own little society and actually had rank, I guess you could say. They got better jobs than some of the other slaves after they earned their loyalty and stuff, like moving into the big house where the aristocracy lived and serving their masters that way. But anyway, I didn't want to go on here and preach about a whole thing. I just wanted to show you how they were controlled. And then after the Reconstruction Act, or the Compromise of 1877, they had to figure out a new way to control the slaves. What happened was the North put that into effect so they could help assimilate the Southern slaves into American society, help them learn how to work, because these people didn't know. They weren't used to being not taking care of themselves. They were used to other people taking care of them. And when the slaves, after they were freed, they were just thrown into the economy. So they had to learn to do things in a new way, a new system. Some of them weren't used to it. They couldn't do it. They couldn't handle it, and they were poor. So what happens? The North, with the Compromise of 1877, tried to actually help them. In some cases, give them land, let them earn things, and they were kind of shown how to fit into the economy and be productive citizens. But the South, they didn't like this, so what they do? They started passing policies and stuff against the slaves. They redistricted. They kept them from voting by redistricting in certain areas, so their votes wouldn't count as much or didn't count, and they could control what votes they got for different races and government and stuff, like the Congress and the Senate and stuff. So they redistricted areas, so like one area with it like was more full of whites than there were freed people, blacks. That way, they knew that most of the whites would vote for a certain person, and the blacks vote, even though they voted, it didn't count as much, or they didn't get as many rights because the whites had the number. So that's how they redistricted certain areas. They also put on poll taxes, and they put on Jim Crow laws, and they did all kinds of sorts of policies that kind of went against the freed slaves. And so they really, it wasn't just the slaves either. There were a lot of poor whites in that day too. They were called nowadays they call them trailer trash. What they call them back then? Oh, I forget. It's a derogatory statement towards certain whites that were poor and they couldn't afford certain things that other whites could do. Poor white trash. That's what they call them, poor white trash. That's where that term originated from, poor white trash. That's what they called the poor white people in those days. So they weren't much better off than freed slaves. I mean, because even though they knew how to work and assimilate into society, they didn't get much benefit either, because they didn't make as much money either. So they didn't have it much better, but they were better acquainted with the way that the economy worked and what production wise they knew how to be more productive. They didn't have it much better either. Anyway, that's how the Democrats in those days controlled the black people, and that's how they controlled them back then. And they started of course, I left out the Ku Klux Klan. The Ku Klux Klan was actually started in those days too, and guess who started them? They won't admit it now. They'll blame it on Republicans or somebody else, but it was your white people, and they had a socialistic attitude, if you don't believe me, because it ruined their freeing the slaves, kind of ruined their economy, and they had to get something new. And so there was socialism in those days, and it's basically evolved through the years and through our history up to the present period. Think about it. How do they control people now? Well, Hillary Clinton, one of them. They want to control people nowadays, just not a little bit different back than they did back in those days, because she's communist, and so are a lot of the other liberal, democratic Democrats. Or let's don't call them Democrats, because they give Democrats a bad name. Liberal-minded BS, commie pinkle BS artists. They want to control people nowadays. How? By making people depend on the government, just like the slaves had to depend on their masters in life to survive. They want to make it that way for people now. They want to make all the people poor, not just blacks nowadays, but they want total control. They want the people to have to depend on them by offering so many entitlements and food stamps and other areas, health care, you name it. Anyway, I think you get what I'm trying to say. That's how they control people. They get a bunch of illegals in here so they can get more votes. That way they can stay in power. They want more people to depend on them, and they tax us to death so we can't afford anything. That way we have to get government programs to survive, and it's not all our fault, it's their fault. They want to tax you to death so you can't make money, so you don't know how to live. They want to take your self-dignity away from you so that you cannot work and produce and make enough money to survive. Instead, they want you to give all your money to the government for all these programs so they can take care of you. They want to take away your dignity and pride and honor and integrity, and that's how they do it. They make you have to depend on them, and they want ultimate control, and that's communism. They want the collective. They want you to do it for, they call it the community. It's not really the community. It's for the collective. They want to do it because it's frickin' communism, and that's what they're doing. And if you don't believe me, you just let it. But people do believe me. There's people out there, and our numbers are strong, and that's why we're trying to eliminate so many illegals coming in here, colonizing our area, changing our attitude, trying to change the Constitution. They want to change it to a communist Constitution. They want to reinterpret the Constitution and make it mean something different because, that's because the Constitution in their minds is an old way of thinking and it doesn't suit their needs. Yeah, needs. They think that the government needs to take care of them and give them everything, and the work ethic and the ingenuity and the pride and honor and innovation. They want to take all this out, and they want to control people, and that's how they do it, just like they did it back in those days. They want to make peasants of everybody, and they want to control them, not just blacks. And even blacks have come to recognize this, and even Latinos. A lot of smart Latinos and blacks have come to recognize this, and they're now doing something about it. Anyway, I pretty well said everything I wanted to say, and if you don't believe me, you think about all this and read up on it. Now I'm going to do some more reading myself, in a way of not only politics but religion too. I want to read because I'm pretty strong in my mind about what I believe, and a way I've grown throughout all these years. I've seen how things operate, what works and what don't work, and I have made mistakes in my life, but nothing major that wasn't, well, some pretty bad things. But anyway, I don't want to talk about my religious thoughts or anything. I'm talking about politics. That's why I have this blog, because I wanted to talk about things that affect life and what's going on, and I like to stay informed because I don't want to be an uninformed individual. I don't want to be controlled like a little puppy, woof woof, expect somebody to feed me, take care of me, and all that kind of thing. I don't want that to happen. I mean, if that's what you want, then you need to get out of this country, because I'm telling you, if you tried to try to cause this to happen, you will have problems. I'm not saying this because I'm making threats. No, I'm not threatening you. I'm telling you what's going to happen. It's happened throughout history, and it happened in the past. And you try to take control of this country and try to change the good moral values and the Constitution and everything else, you're going to have problems. You're trying to overthrow this government, and we know what's happening, and it's not going to happen because there's enough people out there that are smart enough to know what's going on. And they're not just white people, they're not just black people, they're not just Latinos, but a lot of other groups too. They know what's going on. There's some of these groups that have lived under communism, and they know what it's like. They've lived under dictators. They know how bad it was. That's why they got to come to the United States, and those people did it legally. And you got these other people carrying their own flags, trying to invade us from the south. They're throwing rocks at us, and they expect us to give them asylum when they're carrying flags and threatening us. That's no way to. I mean, they're like, yeah, if they get into this country, they're like a guest. It's not their right to come into this country. They don't have rights because they're not citizens of the United States. Now, they may have rights of their country. I say let them go back to their country and let them fight for their freedom like we did. We've had a history of shedding blood to keep our freedoms. And these people want to bring their attitudes and stuff up here, and they want us to take care of them. That's why they're coming up here, because their country won't take care of them. They have to pay outrageous taxes, and they don't make any money. So where do you think they're coming? They're coming up here because, and we got politicians that are stupid and ignorant and crazy, that stupid, ignorant, crazy people vote in. We got a lot of them wits too that vote them in, and it's your fault, not my fault, not the other people's fault, but it's your fault because you voted them in, because you're messed up here. You need to you need to rethink what you're doing, rehash your thinking and your ideology, and realize that, and realize what's going on. Because if these people come in and they colonize the planet, or colonize the United States, that is, sorry, they are going to change the attitude in certain places. But along with that goes bloodshed, because that will happen, because the smart ones, the ones that are conservative of thought and common sense, they will stop you. And you can keep doing what you're doing, or you can wise up, straighten up, and join the common sense people. And I'm not just talking about, I'm talking about anybody that's even Democrats. I mean, there's some good Democrats out there, but there's also a bunch of Looney Tunes up here that other Looney Tunes voted in, and those people are headed down a bad road, I'm telling you, and it'll be dealt with, and they'll either straighten up, or things will happen like they did in the past. We'll have a civil war. It's already going on. We're having it right now. A lot of them can't handle it. They'll take to the streets and they'll fight it out. This trouble with this civil war, it won't be the North versus the South. It'll be neighborhood versus neighborhood, house versus house, person against person, friend against friend, neighbor against neighbor, even family against family, brother against sister, parents against kids. And that's the kind of crap you're looking forward to, and that's what you're going to get. And it starts in the education system. That has to be changed, not just in college. Well, there too, because that's where our educators are being trained. They have to take a look at what they're being taught, and look at what their professors are teaching them, and say, hey, the buck's got to stop here, and something's got to be changed, and this system has to be changed, and they need to teach the right things instead of teaching communism and a bad way of being. It's got to change. And I've blabbed so much, I've run out of, my head's pounding. My thoughts are just running to and fro. Anyway, I said my piece, so I look forward to watching the news and reading and see what goes on. And I'm going to stay alert. Hopefully everybody out there stays alert. So, this is Fraley's World Insight blog for a Sunday night at 6/25, 11/25/2018. And I'm going to sign off and see how this goes.